All right, well, this is our first video in regards to game reviews. I just finished Ghost of Tsushima on PS5 and it was awesome. And so we wanted to take some time and talk about it. Lucas has already beaten it and there's actually this game was crazy and so there's like tons to talk about, but we're going to consolidate it into a podcast episode here. Um, let's get started on why this game was so elite. I'd say right off the bat, this is just the story. You follow this broken, fallen samurai on his journey to save his people that have been slaughtered by the Mongols, right? Um, and along the way, you meet friends and family. Family isn't one person, but friends that you help them along their path through this hard time, and it ultimately builds upon who Jin is as a person, and um, ultimately comes that I think the way you play this game throughout depends on how you choose to end the game, and that's one of the parts we'll get to at the end. What do you think? How's the story?
Yeah, I mean the story is one of the things that like really pulled me in because at the beginning you're fighting on Komodo Beach, right? And you're just like in this whole you're basically just going right into the thick of it. And you're like, "Oh my goodness, like what is happening?" Right? I remember growing up, my uncle used to watch a bunch of like samurai TV shows and also like Western and samurai TV shows. And this kind of gave me that feel of just like, oh my goodness, like I'm in the middle of like a samurai war right now. And this is insane. This is kind of crazy, right? And then you gotta go and it kind of teaches you the basics, but then all of a sudden the story starts out like you face the main bad guy and get demolished by him, right? So you already start the game off as kind of a broken man and like kind of like you said, like a broken samurai, where he's like one of the only survivors of this war. And the Mongols come over and start invading Tsushima. And that to me was already like, oh my goodness, okay. Like I'm excited to get back onto this like growth where I come from this like fallen place, but then I'm going to train and become better so that when I get to the end, I can defeat the big baddie and save my people. So the story was amazing, and I honestly so many different twists and turns, like things that I didn't think were gonna happen, didn't think was going to take this way, right? I thought it was going to be the classic like hero's journey sort of thing, but there's a lot more complexity into this story that honestly made it even that much better.
Yeah. And I mean, let's break it down a little bit more and let's get into it. So, first person you come across is Yuna, right? She's the one that finds you on the battlefield still alive and nurses you back to health. And she's your first partner in crime in trying to take back Tsushima. Um, Now, a little bit backstory, right? Jin's the only member of Clan Sakai left. His parents were both killed. Um, and so he grew up with his uncle, Lord Shimura, um, part of Clan Shimura. And so his when he wakes up, he thinks everyone's dead that he knew. And he saw it on the battlefield, everyone was dying around him. And so when Yuna tells him that, hey, like we need to get out of here, I need your help to escape, let's grab your stuff, then obviously that's the tutorial, but it's an intro to like what's coming ahead of Jin just happened to go through the Mongols. There's no all the way around it. There's only one
Yeah.
way to clean the island of the the Mongols, right? It's to go through them. And so you start off really strong with Jin telling you, or Yuna telling Jin that he needs to do what needs to be done to to survive. Because instead of being samurai, she told him he was a survivor, and he couldn't accept that. I mean, as for at least the first act, he didn't accept it. And so it was at any time he made a decision that was against his code as a samurai, it you could see and hear him hurting. However it was, he's like, "Oh, my uncle's me disappointed in me," or "Oh, this is against everything I stand for," or "Oh, like I don't know if this is the right move for me." And Yuna was the one that said, "Look, like I get that you have this code, but like if you keep this code, we're dead." that's like the honor died on the battlefield. Like we need to just survive at this point. And obviously this is gonna be a controversial topic for both
Yeah.
of us that we can get into later. But that was Yuna. Do you have any thoughts on Yuna? And we can even move it up to Taka as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you meet Yuna and Taka, and I mean, you at this point, your Jin owes Yuna his life, right? Like she was the one that pulled him and pulled him out of the battlefield, or pulled him off, falling off the bridge and pulling him into um, and kind of like healing him back up. And so at this point, Jin is just like, thank you so much for saving me. I'm kind of at this point where I have to continue to like follow you because you're the only one that kind of knows what's going on, right? And then we meet her blacksmith brother who is a goat. We like him. He just wants to be like the entire time he just wants to be like Jin, right? He wants to be
Bro.
he, I
Bro.
know, which unfortunately I guess we should have hopefully we'll state this at the beginning, but this is a spoiler for anyone who hasn't played
Yeah,
Ghost of Tsushima.
definitely spoilers.
Yeah. Um but Taka, that ends up being kind of his falling. That's what makes him fall and ends up killing him in the end, is that he wanted to be like the ghost. And unfortunately, you already kind of see like the actions that Jin is taking is starting to affect the people around him. And I mean, that's going to be inevitable, right? He can't control that, but he's just got to do things that he thinks is best, right? And kind of keep going. And to me, Yuna was kind of like the devil on his shoulder, where it's like, hey, this is how you grew up. This is how everything that you need to forget that, and you need to kind of do it you need to do it the thief's way, right? Because that was the entire time at the beginning, he was just like, I'm not a thief. Like, I'm not going to be like you, right? But Yuna was just like, listen, I survived. I'm from Yarikawa, right? Like she's like, I had to grow up in the slums. And so I had to do what I had to do to survive, and I made it this long because of what I know, right? So Yuna is kind of to me the devil on his shoulder, and Taka is kind of like the innocence that he is still has in him, right? He still has that innocence in him that we end up seeing ends up dying because of that. So I think that's where kind of Jin's innocence left him is when
Yeah.
Taka died.
Well, and I think when Taka dies, I think and Yuna finds out about it. I think that's when you kind of see that Taka was truly a yin to her yang because um she said she's never known life without him. Every moment of her life has had him in it. And it's like she's gonna have to she's pretty much starting over her entire life now. And I loved the Yuna development throughout it because she did instead of take the role of telling Jin he needed to change, it was more of, hey Jin, like I've seen the decisions and the things you've had to go through in our 9 step journey. Let's like I whatever you say goes because I respect the decisions you've made so far, and I think she gained that trust. I think he gained her trust by becoming the thief she needed him to be, but also it elevated when he found the balance of towing the line of thief and samurai, and
Right.
he was this holistic character that was able to be the ghost, right? And that's what I love the ghost. It's like every step of the journey you make, it unlocks a new feature, a new attribute you can unlock, and it slowly works your way towards like this title called Ghost, where it's just such this mysterious
Yeah.
how are
Like
you going to be
the
the ghost as the
the
player of
hero.
Jin?
Yeah.
How are you going to be the hero? And I love that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think that was cool too because you also see kind of like what you're saying. I think about it kind of on like a um Jin grew up samurai and like his dad was a samurai, people around him were samurai, his uncle was a samurai, and he kind of grew up with that knowledge of like this is how the samurai goes, right? You never stab someone in the back. You always like you see that even in like anime sometimes where it's just like a swordsman's disgrace is scars on his back. And that's kind of how Jin lived his entire life. That's what Lord Shimoda would always tell him. It's like when you strike your enemy down, you look him in the eyes and you give him that honor of being a worthy opponent to face you, right? And even towards like the end of the game, there's still moments, there's still some side quests that like you go and do that Jin, his samurai-ness comes out, right? And I thought that was kind of that whole yin and yang that you were talking about is so prevalent throughout the entire game because you see Jin kind of fighting beginning like Act One, you see him like, this is my samurai, but I'm not really feeling like being a ghost, right? And then Act Two, it's kind of like this major battle between the two where he's like, I have to start being more ghost than being more samurai. And then Act Three, it's kind of like, no, I have to become the ghost in order to free my people, right?
Yeah, and well, we can jump back to the other side characters in a second, but let's talk about, you just brought up Act Two. The moment he became the ghost, that part is like, people were calling him the ghost, and he kind of was like, whatever. I'm
Yeah.
just doing what I need to do. And then it gets to the point where he makes the decision to poison the entire Mongol camp, like the entire Mongol camp in the second area in Toyotama. So like,
Yeah.
and then he's talking to Lord Shimura, and he's like, gives him the paper, like, they approved you to become my son, right? Like this
Yeah, the
huge moment,
Shogun. Oh my
this
goodness.
huge moment where Lord Shimura, his whole life, never had a son. And he's
Uh,
like, he trained him to be his son. And
yeah.
you see the dialogue at the very end of the game. He's like, I will train you to be my son. But he said, like, they approved you to become part of Clan Shimura. You'll keep your title as Clan Sakai, but you'll become my son. And he said,
Here,
I'm
own
not
my
your
land.
son,
It's like,
I'm the ghost. And just like tells Yuna to run, and he goes to prison, but escape right after. But like,
right.
he accepts his role. And I think that was the moment where me, as like a team Dark Jedi, team Kanan, team Cal, team, these
Oh, okay. Hold on. I can still be Team Kanan
Empire.
and Cal
You
and
can, but
not.
let me explain. Let me explain.
Okay.
The code was, to them, the Jedi code was dead, right? To Jin, that was in the past, and he had to move on. And so, me supporting this more than you and Jake, I thought it was so cool. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, Act Three is about to go so hard. Like, he is the ghost now. We've been doing ghost-like things for
Yeah.
2 acts, and now it's like, okay, now the ghost is doing these things, and we will free Tsushima from the Mongols. Like, we will. So,
Right. And I mean, that's one of the biggest moments in the game for me that kind of honestly like hurt my heart so bad was the I'm not your son, right? Where I'm like, this I want to be his son. Like I wanted to make those choices, right? And the point, like when that whole conversation he has with Yoriko, which is his caretaker, right? In the Sakai caretaker, where she's the one that's like, hey, I got these flowers and kind of made this is like for rat poison. And then you see the darkness kind of like shift around Jin when he goes, do you think you can fabricate this enough to kill a man? And she was just like, I probably could, but I don't know why you would want that, right? So that moment to me was when I saw like Jin, because like sneaking around doing the assassinations and all that stuff, like I think that's even though that's not the samurai way, I think he was still honored. He still was honorful at that moment, right? Because it's like you kind of have to shift, kind of like what you're saying with Star Wars and Kanan and stuff. The Jedi Order was dead, but he was still able to. He had to shift. Like Kanan and Cal had to shift to survive, but they were still able to keep their honor as Jedi. They're like,
yeah.
I'm still a
Well,
Jedi, right?
yeah, and Lord Shimura didn't like cut him off, like didn't rule it like impossible for him to come back until the poison. That
Yeah,
was the moment where he said, it's like, no matter what, you cannot be samurai.
yeah,
That was the moment. And I think that's why
exactly.
in the story, him saying, I'm not your son, I am the ghost, in the poison moment where there's no turning back. I think that
Yeah,
just was like, that's kind of the moment you see at the end of a game. And that happened to be 2/3 through the game. And so I
right. There
think it
was
was
still
like,
more.
oh, let's go.
Yeah, which again, like that, I think as much as I would want the ending of the story to be like, do you choose to be the ghost or do you choose to be, son of Lord Shimura? Like if there was that choice, that would have been awesome. But the fact that it went down that path where he chose to become like this monster in order to save his people, I think made that the story even more like meaningful and even more like oh my goodness, like what is gonna happen now? Like, is Jin gonna be kind of, you know, like in the end of Shadow of War, right? Where Talion ends up taking on the Nazgul. He ends up becoming a ring wraith. And he was doing that because he's like, I need to hold out as long as I can to let the ring bearer, finish his story. And so we see kind of Talion taking on this evil mantle because he had to. He became the monster in order to protect what the good, right? He's like, if I lose myself in the process, it's worth it. And that's what Jin, that's how I thought Jin was going to be, was he's like, this after that moment where he turns and like poisons the entire camp, which I honestly think he had honor up until that point. When he decided to start poisoning the camp and making them like making that, because you'll see it in side quests too. Like you see it in side quests where that poison ends up affecting the Mongols end up reproducing it and end up using it on on the rest of the Tsushima, like people, the citizens of Tsushima. And you're like, holy cow, what did Jin do? Right? That part even hurt me even more when I went through it. When I was like, oh my goodness, I poisoned all these people. That was horrible. Okay, whatever. That's over. No, it wasn't. The Mongols are using that poison to kill people now. And it's like, Jin, what did you do? I was like, oh my goodness. But it was necessary, right? We see that even in the end, he was still able to find Kotukan and able to end the Mongol raid on Tsushima. And though it took some tools, though it took some bad choices and some choices that need some hard choices, he was still able to free Tsushima. And I think that's in the end, he may be regarded like a monster. He may be regarded as just this ghost that came and killed, but like everyone will be free and will live happily because of it. And so that was probably like the biggest moment for me in the game where you decide to go down the path of just like I need to stop these Mongols at no matter the cost, like no matter what. Doesn't matter how I do it, doesn't matter what I need to do it. I am going to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the point too where they start talking about the mainland, right? It's a lot of it Jin's thinking about bigger than Tsushima. He's like, I have to stop these people so
Yeah,
that the mainland isn't conquered as well. And um, honestly, the point you brought up about the two paths, right? That's how we thought it was. Honestly, that's how I thought, and every average gamer probably thought the game was going to be. Oh, he had to poison them, he loses his honor, but guess what? He beats the Khan, and they're gonna give him a second chance, right?
yeah,
That's just what everyone assumed because that's how every game like ends. It's like,
right.
hey, like you
Happily
had to
ever
do what you had
after.
to do, happily ever after. Lord
Yeah,
Shimura forgives you, and then you end up in Kamigata, which I side note back to the gaming side, I think Kamigata was awesome because it was shorter. The game, if you liberate all the way up, it does take a while. And so I loved how Kamigata was like this like it was mostly story driven. There was a few things on the
yeah,
side to
smaller
do.
area.
Yeah, smaller area. But ultimately like that's where you go to Port Izumi and take down the Khan, who we haven't even talked about yet. But and that's when I'm like, oh yeah, the game's gonna end in 5 minutes. Like, oh yeah, like he'll be forgiven. He's just saved his people. Everyone's gonna love him, and we'll hold off on the story from there, and we'll go back. How about that?
That's fine. Yeah,
So yeah. So next side character Ishikawa, right? Sensei Ishikawa, the archer,
yeah,
and our whole path with him is trying to track down his apprentice Tomoe, and he's kind of this hard hitting, rude, not emotional at all kind of sensei, but Jin loves him, and it
yeah,
kind of caught me off guard that Jin was so normal every time that Ishikawa sounded rude
yeah.
or didn't sound like appreciative. And so I was like, oh dang, this relationship that we never see must go back really deep. And then that was something I was hoping for, is we'd see something earlier in their time growing up.
Mhm.
We only really see Jin and Shimura, Lord Shimura, early on. But the ultimately the story of Ishikawa and Tomoe, I really liked. I did like the end of it and how Ishikawa's final lesson to Jin is don't repeat my mistakes. Classic sensei, right? Classic sensei of, hey, look at my journey, don't repeat what I did wrong, and you'll be fine. You've I've
Right.
already we've been side by side through this entire game. Like I know your path and I know what the decisions you've had to make, but like, don't make my mistakes too, kind of thing.
Right.
And I like that. And Tomoe honestly was cooler than I thought. I thought it was crazy that he figured out that it wasn't some random peasant that he was helping. It was Tomoe undercover, hiding from the Mongols. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that story, that side story arc.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, I'm always a fan of bow and arrows in games, and so the fact that we kind of see like that, almost like a journey take place, because I mean, like, and if you look at Horizon, Horizon is just like they give you a bow and say, hey, this is like good luck, try it, right? But in Tsushima, it's like you're no, you're a trained samurai, but I'm also going to teach you how to shoot a bow later on, right? And so his story was kind of cool, kind of going. I mean, that whole story from him being like one of the greatest archers in the land, training this like also great archer, but one that has, full of passion and kind of fire that kind of like, you know, crosses their paths and stuff. It almost kind of gives you like an Anakin Obi-Wan, right? Where you have like the level-headed master, but then you have like the hot-headed um, apprentice. And so I actually really like that side story, um, and kind of the end where you get to kind of choose what happens, right? You get to see if like, oh, do you is what is how is Tomoe gonna end up out? Like, how is she going to end in this way, right? So I thought Ishikawa was a great character. I mean, he starts out hard headed and like rude, like you were saying at the beginning, but then as the story progresses, as the story kind of goes, you start to see him kind of those walls start to crumble a little bit with Jin, and he starts to get a little bit more real with Jin. And I always really like that too, because Jin stood by him even though he could have left and been like, no, sorry, dude, like my uncle likes you and my dad worked with you, but I'm not gonna do anything with you. I don't want to deal with you. But he decided to keep going, which I thought was the honorable thing to do and kind of help him out, right? So I really like that story, and that story arc about it.
Yeah, and there's a couple other side quests. Yuna's and Ishikawa's were my two favorite. There's Lady Masako and there's Norio, the monk.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe we skip across those and go
Mhm.
talk about the con
Yeah,
because
Kotun
I
Khan.
thought he was a dog. Like
Yeah.
he stood for horrible things and destroyed an entire island. But like his dialogue, his poise, his response, the killing of Taka was just like brutal. It was everything that I thought he was about. Because
Yeah.
it's like Elden Ring. In the very first 3 seconds of the game, you fight this enemy and you die. And then in Ghost of Tsushima, you go and think you're all that, and you go and try and kill the Khan, and he puts you in your place, right? And you're
Yeah.
supposed to go through the game and be to a level where you can take him down because he's better than you in every way. And that's why he was
Yeah.
able to smoke all the samurai in the beginning, right? And so I thought I thought it was interesting how he kept moving north. Obviously, that's part of the game, but like he kept fleeing from where Jin was going because he had no answer. He knew how to beat a samurai. He didn't know how to beat a ghost. And so he
Right.
slowly was retreating to the point where he was moving to the mainland because he just was done with Tsushima. That was my opinion because the way I played, I walked up the island and did all the liberating, and so I was like, okay, well, if I'm playing this way in my mind, then he's moving on. Like he's moving on. He took us out. He can come back here anytime he wants. He's leaving the Mongols
Yeah.
that are already here, and he's gonna go take mainland. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm winning throughout this game, and so he slowly you see the con, and up until I think the big moment is Taka's death, where you're like, okay, at this point he is still the elite of the elite, and I'm not gonna beat him. And then from that moment, when you move into Act Three and end of Act Two, then it's like, okay, we are strong enough to take this man down. And he started more to fear Jin because he didn't have Lord Shimura up his belt. He didn't have Ryozu up his belt that he could use as a tactic to try and bring down the ghost, right? It
Right.
was more of a 1v1 instead of like Kotukan and his assets to try and take down Jin versus him versus Jin.
Yeah.
So,
I think you nailed it on the head. I never really thought of that way too, because I always thought it was just like Kotukan is, kind of burns through Tsushima. being like, I'm gonna conquer this so I can have like a steady foothold in Japan, so that when I go hit the mainland, I have reinforcements. Like I have a whole island to myself that I can either retreat to or I can, start building resources so that they can also start funneling the attack, right? And I never thought about it as like, oh, Jin was kind of he never thought of Jin as kind of like a a important piece to the puzzle until he started becoming the ghost. Where he was like, yeah, you even hear him say it where he's like he learned the language, he learned Japanese, um, because he wanted to know his enemies and he wanted to know who to conquer, right? And so, but all he learned about the samurai is that there's a code of ethics, there's a code of honor that if you have to attack them head on, they're never going to like sneak around and be kind of like sneaky and try to take you out. They're gonna like full frontal attack you all the time. And so that was what he was prepared for. But then as soon as Jin started becoming the ghost and started gathering resources that are kind of different, right? Poisoning, um, that's why Kotsu Khan, like I assume that's why Kotsu Khan ended up reproducing because he's like, I never would have thought of that. And think like it's good that even though I lost so many men to the poison, I was able to reproduce it and do it because I think that's a great idea, right? So he doesn't know how to. He didn't like. He would have never suspected that if Jin had not gone the ghost side, and so he's starting to learn. But even then, like that wasn't enough because Jin got to the end, right? Gets to Port Izumi and was just like, "Here, Khan, let's go. Like I'm gonna take you out." And in the end ends up taking him out and freeing Tsushima of the Khan's the Khan legacy, right? And I thought that was so cool. One that they used a Khan, right? Like they could have just made up um, some Mongol's name or something, right? But they end up using like Genghis Khan's grandson, I think is what it was, or grandfather. I don't remember what like how this places in time, but using someone as notorious as Genghis Khan and kind of putting him in there almost made the game even more realistic to me because it's like, oh, this is the classic fight between Japan and Mongolia and the Mongols versus the Japanese army and the samurai, right? And it's cool um that even though Tsushima was infested with Mongols, Jin was still able to fight him and keep them from advancing to the mainland. And the Shogun were like, they didn't. I remember, I think Shimuro even came back and was just like, oh, well, the Shogun aren't going to send any more samurai because they don't think it's this big of a threat. They think that we could take on the Khan, right? And so that was also kind of interesting too to see like Khotun Khan kind of almost being under, um, like undermined or almost like what's the word I'm looking for? I don't remember.
Disrespected by the Shogun.
Yeah, basically just like underestimated by the
Yeah.
Shogun. And I thought that was super cool. Um, like that character development from him.
Yeah. And before we get to the ending, we've talked about all these side quests and this character development. I think I did the math yesterday. There's like 53 side quests, and I did all of them except for one when I beat the game. I thought I did them all, and turns out I forgot some little random side quest where you help some random guy beat some bandits.
Yeah,
And so I did that, platinum of the game, and it was interesting because I was scrolling through to make sure I had them all. I felt like every single one had direct, whether it was him helping villagers or him with Ishikawa or one of the main side quests, or if it was him doing a mythical tale where he was learning a new technique or anything. I felt like every single one built his character or showed how he loved his people. And that it wasn't any dead weight. It wasn't like some stupid go to the market and buy these things, you know? It
yeah,
wasn't that. And so it I never felt like I was wasting time because originally I was gonna just go through the game, and then I got through like Act 1, and I was like, I can't do this. I need to go back and liberate freaking Izuhara, the first area,
yeah,
and then I was like, okay, at this point, I'm just gonna hit all the side quests too because I want to know. I want to see Jin become the ghost rather than just play the story to see him become the ghost because I know there's so much more on the side. Um, and so that being said, let's talk about Lord Shimura and the ending.
Oh,
So we see we defeat the Khan, right? The Khan is dead. And we already talked about this a little bit. Like at this point, it's like, oh yeah, game's over. They're gonna forgive him, right? And so he's on the horse with Yuna, and Yuna's like, "Oh yeah, you got this letter from your uncle. He wants you to meet. Like, do you want me to come with you?" And you're like, "No." Jin's like, "Nah, I'm gonna go see him in person." And sure enough, it's at the little training ground in Omi Village where he and Lord Shimmer would train. Just that's where Clan Sakai was located. And so he, of course, it's like a nostalgic place for them because I just am assuming in my mind, I'm like, okay, if Lord Shimura is going to confront him, it's going to be like this, oh, I forgive you, or oh, the Shogun forgives you, or hey, you got to go into hiding. One of those three things was like what I was expecting, but that happened to not be the case, right? You find out really quick that Lord Shimura has been told he has to kill you. Like he had they're like, thank you for saving the island, but you're still you still have no honor.
yeah, you're a
And
monster.
my punishment, because you were my student pretty much, is I have to end you and bring your head to the shogun to cleanse the samurai. Because you no one follows their leaders anymore. You taught people to disobey orders. You taught people to disregard the code, and you're following the people that follow the ghost is too it needs to be eradicated, right? It can't continue, and you dying will will show the people that we need to get back to what we were. And Jin's like, in my mind, in Jin's mind, it's like, how can you go back to things we were? We're such a new people now from what we've overcame. Like, why can't we see progress? Why is what you guys think is right the right thing? Because when we thought what we were doing was right, the Mongols came and just murdered us. And so he's like, I understand what I did with the poison, and I would do it again if I had to.
Yeah,
But
that was
but it hurts to see Jin, and in my mind, I to see Lord Shimmer refuse to take a stand too, because Jin, right before the final battle, writes him a letter telling him to join him, and Lord Shimura pulls up, which means like he acted with emotion, like he did. He acted with some emotion because he loved Jin, even though everything transpired and he said, "I'm not your son" and all that. He still showed up, and so I was like, how could Lord Shimura choose to do this over Jin after what he just did? And so I don't know. Let's hear what you got. What's your thoughts on that whole that conversation they have building up to that pivotal moment?
yeah. Well, I mean, it was hard. It was hard to hear the things that he went through um because yeah, I mean, it's the sense of like duty versus what you think is right. And so to me, like going through this entire thing, I played the game as basically as samurai as I could. I only used sneak when I had to. I only like every single time I pulled up on a band of Mongols, I always challenged them and like fought them that way, right? I was always a full frontal assault guy. And which is
Yeah,
different for me because I love sneaking. I love like the Assassin's Creed, like that's how I played was very sneaky. But this way, because I'm like, I want Jin to be the samurai, and that's how I played, hoping like going to that through the game, right? The first two acts, and then you get to the poison scene, and that's when I knew I can't. I'm gonna try, but I know that there's gonna come a point where I can't be the samurai that I want to be, and unfortunately, it was the moment, the most pivotal moment of probably of Jin's life at this point, where it's the duel between him and Shimura, right? And
yeah,
that whole connection that he has, Shimura's like, I mean, despite what you think, I honestly look at Shimura as being like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, I have to do this because of this code that I have, right? Which I'm like, no, just let him go. Just don't fight at all. To say, hey, you're a dishonored samurai. Just go on, be a Ronin, do whatever. Like, I'll tell him that I killed you and you fell off a cliff or whatever, right? Just
yeah,
leave. That's what I was hoping was gonna happen. Because I'm like, at this point, Jin is at like a I can't turn around. So
Yeah.
this whole conversation, and then the moment I honestly, when I played this game and I started fighting Shimura, I didn't do anything. I just let Shimura kill me because I wanted to see if that would spark something else. So I was just like, no, I'm not gonna fight this. But then it didn't, and so I knew I had to fight him. And so the entire time I'm like, oh please, as I'm parrying all of his hits, I'm just wrecking him, and I'm like, oh please, And so that whole moment between Shimura and Jin was just, it was so emotional. I'm like, oh, like I couldn't imagine being in his uncle's position or even in Jin's position where it's like I'm seeing this father figure because my father died young and I literally watched my dad die in front of me, but I'm seeing my father figure look at me and say, "Hey, I need to kill you. Like I need you to die." And there's nothing I can do about it. And Jin's just like almost feeling like some sort of betrayal, but like Lord Shimura on his side, like he's like, I have to do this because this is going to benefit long term. This isn't just going to affect me. It's going to affect Japan as a long term. And that's what he was looking at. He was never like, this is all about me, all about me, all about me. It's about the future, right? And Lord Shimura is just looking at this kid that he raised and that he was going to be named his son, looking at him and being like, I have to strike you down. Like that moment just killed it for me. I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Right. And get that we move on to like the final confrontation, right? Where it was a pretty tough battle. Like it was a fun battle. Like you basically go in and basically fighting almost a version of yourself, doing similar moves, right? Like being quick and blocking and all that stuff. Um, the Lord Shimura fight was really good, but like towards the ending is what like where I was so heartbroken about. I think which the choices you were made, but I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, so the fight was crazy, right? You talked about it, and I think I just my mouth was wide open that whole conversation of just hearing Shimura tell Jin, "Hey, I have to kill you," and it's like it's just the ending no one expected. I did
Yeah,
not expect the Shogun to still label him a criminal. I could understand probation. I could understand what you said, what you wanted, where the Shimura said run away kind of thing. Or I'll pretend I killed you
exile.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like exile. Yeah, like I could understand that, but the fact that like he had to bring your I have to bring your head to the Shogun. Like Clan Sakai is dead. New samurai are coming to inhabit your lands. Let's go honor your parents before like this place is no longer Clan Sakai, right? And I just was blown away by all that, and I loved how we wrote a haiku right before the fight. And so like we're both kneeling, we're both looking around. You play the game where you have to move around and you choose what you want in your haiku. And I thought there's so much art in this game. Like it wasn't like you're looking at paintings or you're stealing paintings or it's all these fancy temples and stuff like that. No, but it was like you're you reflect and do so much of this personal growth without the side characters too, and it all comes to fruition against Shimura, who's like what you said, like your equal, who all the same moves he trained you, and you do this through the haikus and the bamboo shoots and the fox dens where you're honoring shrines and you play the song for the platinum trophy. You have to play the song at Taka's grave, and you do all these things to finally write this final haiku that you're gonna write next to your uncle before like the biggest moment of his life was the poisoning part where he says I'm the ghost, I'm not your son, and then now the new biggest part of his life is, hey, I gotta kill my uncle to
yeah.
survive. And so you get to the bloody battle, whatever, yada yada yada. You take down Lord Shimmer, right? And I thought this was like, okay, at this point I'm just like, there's no way Jin kills Lord Shimura. Like there's no way. He's gonna walk with honor, and he's gonna say, I'm not gonna kill my family. Like I'm gonna claim I have honor. I did what I had to do for my people. I understand I made mistakes, but hey, you have to love me like the best you can. Like this is I'm not going anywhere. That's how I thought it was gonna go after I took him down. And sure enough, we get a Jedi Academy moment where Sucker Punch makes you choose. Do you walk and spare him, or do you kill him? And so obviously, I called you right when I got to this moment. It sat
Yeah.
on my screen for like 7 minutes because I could not decide what I should do.
Oh,
And I
it
was,
was so
and
hard. I
so
mean, it was. easy for me, but it's a
Yeah,
hard,
yeah.
hard
I,
choice.
I knew what you picked initially. I knew right off the bat. And I know what my older brother picked because this is his favorite game too. I know what you both picked without even asking you guys. And so I was like, I kind of want to pick kill just to see what happens. But also in talking to you, I felt like killing him was the more was the option that the ghost, like the person Jin has become, would do. It's not what we want, it's what he would do. Shimura asks for a warrior's death. He knows he'll be hunted for the rest of his life, regardless. Shimura's accepted the fact that Jin's gonna kill him. He's accepted that. And he tells him when I chose to press kill, and you don't even no, it doesn't even let you press it. You have to hold the button for five
Oh yeah,
seconds.
yeah. It
You
wants you to
know,
make sure that
gruesome.
you made a choose.
Yeah, brutal, right? And so I'm like holding the button, like, wow, I'm about to kill my uncle. Like, this is brutal. But like, it was the option I was gonna choose. Even if I hadn't talked to you, I probably was gonna pick it because that's just more of my style. And the interaction they have, I'm sure you've watched the clip, but like Chimera tells him, like, hey, find me in the next life. And it was like to me right there, I just felt like Shimura was like, I in the end, I mean, obviously he's defeated, but like I felt like his honor, nothing Jin could do would let Shimura lose his love for Jin. He was disappointed, and it was to the point where he had to, take his head to the Shogun, but like the love was still there. And I think Jin knew that the whole time, hence the haiku, hence the Lord Shimura crying through the whole fight. Um, and I think giving him the warrior's death was noble's the wrong word, heroic's the wrong word, but like ghost like is the word I would use to describe it because it was so fitting in my mind. It I wouldn't even call it the high road because I don't know if there was a high road opportunity. You like
No,
that's why this choice sucked is because there was no high road. There was
yeah,
no right
like good
choice.
versus bad. Yeah,
Yeah, good versus bad didn't exist. It was
no,
it was
it was worse
what do
and
you think
bad.
you would do if you were the ghost and you get to live with that decision?
Right,
And,
exactly.
and I was mad too because I didn't save. I didn't know what was happening, right? I thought the end of the game was the con. And so I
Nope.
should have saved right before so I could play out both on my own. Um, but the kill was brutal, like it was. I don't regret it, just like Jin didn't regret his poison. I don't regret choosing the kill, but like imagine that. Like imagine having to make that's the final blow to the story is hey, like to kill your uncle. Like because he's not the enemy in the game, right? But he
No,
becomes the enemy
he's the
in
enemy
a
to the
way.
ghost.
Yeah, he's the enemy to the ghost. He's not the
He's
enemy to
not,
Jin, right?
yeah, he's not an enemy to Jin, but he's an enemy to the ghost.
And
Ugh,
Jin is the ghost. Jin's not gonna put away what he went through. Jin can't. And whether he wants to or not, he can't. Right? It's who he is now. Through the side quest, through the con, through Taka getting his head ripped off right in front of him, through all these little heroic acts of defeating bandits. I mean, he killed his own people to save because they were all revolting, right? I mean, through all these micro things, he, in my opinion, needed to kill Lord Shimura. It wasn't if he wanted to, it wasn't that he had to, it's that he needed to. It just had to be done, and he could find resolve. It, I think he could find more resolve killing him than by his uncle having to every night lay in bed knowing that he has to go try and find Jin and try and bring him down and try and bring justice to the island, right? Because he has to continually find ways to bring justice to the island because Jin showed him mercy and did because and then if he didn't kill him, isn't that against the samurai code too to leave him there? Like so, it's like I towed the line forever, but I just was like, I think killing is the move I need to make, and it's
yeah,
the move I think the ghost would make, not Jin, the ghost. Just like Lord Shimmer's enemy was the ghost, not Jin. I played it as the ghost decision, not Jin decision.
yeah. Well, honestly, I think the way you explained it actually got me thinking here because I would think to me the ghost is Jin, but Jin is more Jin than ghost. that was the way that I played it, right? But the fact that you mentioned that, the way that you talked about that, that actually does make a lot more sense to me. Where, yeah, he probably would have just been like, "Hey, I want to give you honor," right? And to me, like the way that I played it, I'm not gonna add more than what you said because I think what you said was great, and honestly is way better than the a way better description of what the reason why I chose it. Because I just wanted Jin to be close to the samurai again, right? I wanted him to continue that having that like samurai like way. And so
Yeah.
I to me, like the reason why I chose not to spare him was because Jin, again, like I mentioned, Jin had all of his honor. Like he still continued having his honor up until the poisoning part. When he decided to poison the Mongols, that's when I figured that I was like, okay, Jin is no longer a samurai. He's dishonored himself. That was everything. Like it's game over from there. So I figured since I was already dishonored, I was not held by the code anymore, right? So, and I mean that's even what Jin says. If you choose to spare him, he goes, I am no longer honored, so I don't need to hold on to this code, right? And Shimura is like, you have to kill me. You beat me, right? And he's like, I'm not going to spill my own like kin's blood. So I've already lived in dishonor and I'm going to live it. I'm going to continue to live in dishonor. And then Lord Shimon's like, they're going to be hunting you. And he's like, I can live with that, right? He's like, don't worry, I can live with that. As long as I know that Tsushima is safe, I can live with that. Right. And that was hard. I was like, are you okay? Yeah. So there's no more Jin the samurai. It's Jin the ghost, and he's officially the ghost. And even like that point even goes a little bit further that as you finish the epilogue of the game, you appear in this like little makeshift um shelter that you have, and your ghost gear is now red. And you're like, what the heck? Like, why did it change its color, right? Then it's because now Jin is embracing that because everyone looks at the ghost as like a liberator, but some people look at him like a monster. And so that's kind of how he wants to portray himself to his enemies, is that I'm a monster. And so if people see a red being come in and kill a bunch of people, right, kill a bunch of these Benjamins, they're going to be afraid and they're going to think, oh no, a monster, which has already happened like a few times, right?
Wait. So have you not researched the kill side of this? Have you not looked at this? Because when you chose to spare him, your armor, your attire turned red. When I chose to kill him, my attire turned white.
Oh no way, really?
Yeah, so mine's all white, and I think you used the perfect word liberator because I liberated Shimura. You left him in this phase where now like he has to see you as a monster because that's what the ghost is now. But I think I cleansed him
Oh, I
and
didn't
I
know that.
think I gave him peace, and that's what cleansed him. And then now my attire is white, actually.
Oh,
So
that's
interesting,
crazy.
right? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is very interesting. I had no idea because I just figured that he was embracing his role as the ghost, and so that's why it turned red. But the fact that it turned white when you killed him is that even adds even more complexity and more depth to it because it's yeah, like you said, it could be just him like cleaning himself of Jin's past, right? That could be like he is now purified of Jin, and now he's no longer Jin, he is now the ghost, only and only the ghost, right? I kept part of Jin inside of me when I chose to spare him, but that's gonna be always a conflict fighting him. He's not gonna have conflict anymore now that Shimura's dead. Because his
Yeah.
family's dead, his clan's dead,
His
his
line dies with him. Like
his
everything's
line.
dead. He
Yeah,
ends everything. I think, yeah, I agree with that. He like Jin is gone. I think obviously at the end of the epilogue, Yuna's talking to him and they split ways. But
yeah. Thank goodness.
yeah, I would say for the most part. I mean, for you, you haven't finished the platinum, so like you still have to go to do the side quests and the Fox and like people are gonna call you Jin in those moments. But like
Yeah,
for me, the game's over. I can new game plus it if I want, but like I just am now the ghost, right? It's just like I
yeah.
can fool around anytime I want and just kill random Mongols on the street, but I'm 100% of the game. So like, well, I didn't get all the records and the artifacts, but I have enough to get the platinum, so I'm content with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've become the
Right,
ghost.
and that was one of the first things I actually went back to it when you started playing it because I wanted to kind of go back and feel it, right? And so I did all the liberations, and so I liberated Tsushima first, and then I started kind of jumping in all that, right? And so I really enjoyed I really enjoyed just the aspect of kind of like you growing into your legend. Kind of like what we mentioned at the beginning, right? Because the game's over. Shimura's his fate is left up into our hands, but then now it's like, okay, now what else? What's more, right? What are we gonna do? And to Jin, that means I need to step up and fully eradicate the Mongol problem on this island, and and by doing that, that means I need to step up and being the ghost. And so that was cool to kind of have like the beginning or the end of the game, and even if you play it like the way, depending on how you play it, the end of the game is going to be the same, where you are fully the ghost and you become the ghost, and you are now like Tsushima's liberator, but also Tsushima's like own mythic monster, right? Like you are the one that spreads fear, almost like Batman, right? Batman isn't looked at he's looked at it by like as a hero from a lot of people, but his enemies, they're afraid of him. They're like, this dude is gonna come for me. Like they're
Yeah,
afraid, and that's what Jin is doing, is that he wants them to be afraid of him so that they won't mess with Tsushima again.
yeah. Well, the last question I had, we've kind of already talked about it. We're gonna disagree on this forever, because of the path we picked. Um, you've said it multiple times. Jin lost his honor with the poison. Um, I, I truly believe you have second. Always a second or third, fourth chance, and so that's why Revenge of the Sith hurts that much for me is because they didn't give Anakin those chances. Um, and that's why I love, characters like Kanan and Cal, where they're like, you know what, the Order's dead. Like, I'm gonna make these decisions based on what I think is right. And so I thought Jin was honorable as much as possible. So like he does have honor, almost like Zuko, right? Zuko finds new like he doesn't need his father to tell him he has honor. He
Right.
goes out and he gets his own honor. And he's like, I am honorable because of look what I've done in my future, not what I did in my past. And I think I look at Jin as in like the con or than the past. It's a past thing that's with him forever, and now he can go gain more honor. Like he can go he where does he go next? Where's your next move? Not looking in the past. Whereas like the Shogun were like, you did this one time, like you're done. Like,
Right.
and I know there's more than that. There's so much more repercussion. Like the poison you talked about. He poisoned them, and then the Khan turned the poison against his people and started poisoning them. And it's because he and Yukiro
Yuriko.
Yuriko um, developed the poison, he hurt his own people, and I get that repercussion, and that's probably the biggest point of the honor. That's probably the hardest for me is not him poisoning the Mongols. It's the fact that the Mongols used his concoction against them,
Yeah.
his own people, and so that repercussion, which whether he foresaw that or not, I think that's going to be the hardest thing for honor to be restored. But also, I don't think Jin looks at the word restore anymore. I think it's rebuild. He doesn't need
Right.
to. He can't go back in the past. And so if Lord Shimura has to do something because of a past thing, that sucks to suck. I'm not gonna die for something I did for my people. I'm gonna go and try and find honor elsewhere. And it started for me by killing him and starting that new chapter and having the white outfit. That's where I think the honor can be found in the future. I just think you can't dwell on your past, right? You have to look ahead, and the Shogun or the Jedi Council are, Lord Ozai, they're never gonna look past that. They're never gonna look past the past. Look at Ahsoka leaving the Order because they didn't believe her, and then when they were wrong, they tried to fix it. Well, you can't look at that way. It's an absolute, which you can say only Sith deal in absolutes. We've talked about this not a lot on the podcast, but in person, I'm gonna make the argument that Jedi Council deals in absolutes, right? Zuko's dad told him he was unhonorable and that he sucked, and like that's how the end of the story was, and
Yeah.
that's why Zuko thought he had to do this huge miraculous thing and kill the Avatar just to get his father's approval, right? And so I think will find his honor. Whether they make another game or not, I don't know if you can if you have a alternate ending like that. But
Yeah.
um, whatever, if it even ends right here, if it ends right here, I truly believe he does have some honor. Like he does have some.
Yeah. And that's well said. I think that's a great point to consider because I just like for me, it's all about the idea, right? His entire intent, like it's the intent, right? It's Jin's intent was I need to save my people. And I'm gonna do that in
And the
one way.
Shogun won't accept that.
Right. And so they're like that's where I'm like, okay, that's kind of where the line I draw personally is when you don't that you're too rigid, right? There needs to be some firmness and some steadfastness, in my opinion, where I think like Qui-Gon Jinn was more of a wise councilman than any of the Jedi Council, right? Even Obi-Wan at times, right? Where he still maintained he was still a Jedi, but he still maintained the true aspect of the Jedi, which is peacekeeper, right?
Yeah, and
Not
that's why I
political
think
leader.
everyone loves Obi-Wan. I think it's not as much as he's in all the content more than any other Jedi, him and Anakin, but I think it's because he had the way he balanced Anakin and his Mace Windu side. I
Yeah,
think that's and Qui-Gon was way more on the Anakin side. And so I think I should have not used Mace Windu. I should have used Qui-Gon and Anakin for both
right.
sides of Obi-Wan. And I think his ability to balance those is why he's such a beloved Jedi, is because of that rigidity that he avoids. Right? He say one thing and then do another, but he was backed by the council for his because they knew what he was about and what he was dealing with, Anakin.
Yeah,
But also he was able to work with Anakin because he knew Anakin was a winner and he knew Anakin was going to get the job done. Right? Sorry, keep going. That's what you made me.
no, you're good.
It's always crazy to me that you love the Jedi Order so much. I know it's about what they
Okay, hold
stand
on, hold on, hold
for,
on, hold on,
but
hold
you're such a Qui-Gon Jinn fan. You're such a Qui-Gon Jinn fan, and I love that because he's not the Jedi Order.
No, and what
He's
I
the
mean by
OG.
Jedi Order, right, isn't councilman, isn't the Jedi Council itself. It's what the Order stood for at the beginning when there were 10,000 Jedi Knights roaming the galaxy, where they
Yeah,
weren't political leaders, they weren't generals, they weren't all that stuff. They were there to be diplomatic, like exactly what Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were doing, right? Where they were being diplomatic. They were kind of like, I'm here to solve problems first by talking and seeing this and peace and like trying to broker these deals between the Trade Federation and the Republic. But instead, but like, if I need to use force, just know that I'm going to use force and I'm going to kick your butt. And that's the Jedi that I stand for. Like Cal and Kanan are perfect examples of that too, where they still
Balin.
maintained. But well, Balin is
Give us
on the other
Morgan
side of the
Elsbeth.
spectrum.
Give us Morgan Elsbeth, and we'll walk away peacefully. How about
Yeah, that's true. No, that's a good point. He
that?
also the thing is but he was a little bit more selfish on that point, right? Where he was just like, I don't want to fight you because that's not going to fit into my ulterior motives.
Yeah,
But if
that's
you
fair.
do
That's
get
fair.
in
That's
my
fair.
way, I will kill you, right? Where it's like Kanan and Cal, if they had the choice to be like, I'm gonna turn off my lightsaber and not kill Rosh, they're not gonna kill Rosh, right? Jedi Academy for you right there.
Oh,
I
Jedi
can't
Academy.
look
That
at
was the first thing I thought of in this Ghost of Tsushima game at the end, man. I was like, oh my gosh, what happens if I kill Rosh, man? Like, is everyone gonna turn against me now? Because
yeah,
like that's in Jedi Academy, it's not the end of the game. It's close to the end of the game, but
yeah,
it's like if I kill Rosh, it's me versus all the Jedi and all the Sith. And if
yeah,
I don't kill Rosh, it's me versus all the Sith.
yeah.
And so, I mean, obviously you kill Rosh. I do. I did. The first time I played it, I killed the Rosh
I killed him
because
the second
I,
time. I saved
yeah.
him. I
Well, I wanted to. I watched my brother play it growing up on the PC, and so I was like, I knew what was going to happen if I killed him, and so I just wanted the clip of throwing my lightsaber at Rosh. But yeah, that's what I thought of in this game, and so luckily the game ended because I was like, there's no way I can fight everyone at the same time, or like I don't know what they're gonna do with the story if it keeps going after this moment. Um, but who knows? Maybe he goes to Tsushima too, right?
That's true. We'll see. And I think again, like you have such a good point about the honor steadfast, right? Like standard, where it is a little bit different now, because like, and I think that's one of the beauties of the game is how we can literally have two aspects of what honor means to us, where it's like I honestly in his intent, Jin was honorable in trying to um protect his people. The way he wanted to save them, but I don't think he needed to go that far. That was my thing. I think he could have found another way to sneak into the Mongol base and eradicate all of them without having to poison them. Right. That was probably the biggest like
Yeah,
what
but
if.
that's what Sucker Punch did to us. They made it that way.
I
Because
exactly
obviously,
because they
you've made it through this many strongholds, killing everyone. You could easily make it through that one. Like
oh
you,
exactly
it would have taken longer, but you could have done it. And you see it happen at Port Izumi. You do it at Port Izumi, but like they make you do it that way for the story, and that's why PlayStation makes fire games.
right. And I mean it's and Sucker Punch has always been good. I mean we're not to get on another tangent, but Sucker if you play other Sucker Punch games, um, including like Infamous,
Sly
that's the
Cooper.
whole and Sly Cooper, right? But I don't think Sly Cooper has like a morality aspect of
Well,
it.
the whole premise of the game is he's a thief,
Right, exactly. But you don't know. It's
but
not
he's a
like,
good thief.
but it's not like you get to choose to be a thief or you don't choose to be a thief,
Yeah.
right?
That's like the whole point of the game is to steal stuff.
Right. So in like, there's another game series, the infamous game series, where that's your whole premise is you have the choice to either be a monster or to be a savior, basically. Like you can
Mm.
choose to heal people or you can choose to hurt people. And that is like across all three of their games. And that's the cool thing about those games is that
All three of their PS2 games.
they're PS3, all right? They're all three PS3 games. And I'm had but they diverge into two different storylines if you choose whether good or bad. And so I this was a refreshing change because Ghost of Tsushima was they almost forced you to go down one path.
They did
And
until the end, until the
until
last choice.
right, well exactly they did, but I didn't really follow that. I was just like every stronghold I went into, I wasn't sneaking. I just went in and like started slashing people up. I was like
Yeah, and
fight them
that's how
off.
I was too towards the end. I mean, there's so many. I think there's 45 or something strongholds to liberate. And so I got to that point where I just was running through and just because you eventually get the ghost stance, right? Where you can just like slice like three people in a row, and then
Yeah.
I have that you press L1 and R1 at the same time, and you do like the triple slash and
Yeah.
using your resolve for things that aren't healing. And
Yeah.
so you get to that point in the game when
Yeah. I
you
like
do
that.
all the bamboo strikes, you get total of 10 circles. So and so you can in if you're wearing the Clan Sakai armor in a standoff, you can fight 5 enemies and
Mhm.
you can get all 10, I think, all 10 resolves in one standoff of five.
Oh, that's cool.
And so you go into a stronghold with all your resolve, like that's 10 free kills,
Yeah.
on top of the standoff you already killed 5 people.
Right.
So
So, yeah. So, anyways, kind of round it all off. This game, I totally understand why I got a 10 out of 10. Like,
oh yeah, oh yeah.
totally, totally understand. Despite the feelings it induced in me, I can't negate how great the storytelling was and how refreshing it was um, to get like a new perspective on things instead of it being all hunky dory like I like it, right? Where good always wins in the end. This is kind of like, well, here's some moral ambiguity. Do what you will with it, right? Do let you can fill in the blanks, and that was amazing. And so I 100% agree with the rating it gave. It's an amazing story. I love that even though like we both played the game in a similar fashion, but yet we have almost an hour of content to talk about the differences that you and I saw in the game. And I think that goes
Yeah.
to show its creation and how well the game was put together.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. 10 out of 10. I need to go platinum God of War Ragnarok before I'm gonna say which one I like better. Um, but it's in that S tier for me of Ragnarok, Tsushima, Jedi Survivor, Jedi Fallen Order. Um, those type of games that are story driven with great combat. And so yeah, 10 out of 10 for sure.
Yeah.
But anyways, well, great conversation. We'll be doing a lot more of these. Next one is Hellblade 1 in anticipation for Hellblade 2 coming out in May. So yeah, get hyped for that. And then we're probably going to be more try and get more unified on which game we play, and we're going to play it at the same time instead of like Ghost of Tsushima. I'm just beating it. Lucas beat it when it came out, kind of thing. So that's why Hellblade's next. We both haven't played it yet. It's been out for a while, but we're playing it on Xbox this time because Hellblade 2 is going to be an Xbox exclusive. So that's the plan there, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, appreciate your time, Lucas.
Yeah, thanks for the great conversation.
Yeah.
You
All
sick.
right,
Peace out.
man.